Okay, well, welcome everybody. It's now 1 o'clock, so, well, UK time 1 o'clock, so we'll get started with today's event. Welcome to this first Climate Hackathon presentation. My name is Catherine Rooney. I'm the Senior Partnerships Officer here at the Chevening Scholarship, one of the 3 scholarships participating in this event, and I'll be your MC today. I am so excited to be welcoming you to one of our first ever cross-scholarship collaboration events. The hackathon has been designed to coincide with the 26th UN Climate Change Conference of the Parties, COP26, that I'm sure most people on this call know is hosted in Glasgow this November. One of the goals of COP26 is collaboration, and in many ways, this is the core goal, the goal that supports all other COP26 goals and the fundamental purpose of every COP. It's a recognition that, in the words of COP President Alok Sharma, on climate, the world will succeed or fail as one. It is appropriate then that the Majesty's Government Scholarships Climate Hackathon should be a truly collaborative and global event. And that's what we've seen. Over 130 alumni from almost 50 countries and territories worldwide have come together for this groundbreaking, for us, truly groundbreaking project that's been jointly organised between the 3 FCDO scholarships, CSC, Marshall and Chevening. Of course, one of our central objectives of the scholarships is to create global cooperation and build global networks. And it's great to see the networks of our alumni expanding by bringing together the 3 scholarships in this way. Before we get started with the logistics and the housekeeping, just want to take this opportunity to thank the scholarships teams at the ACU who've been working together for several months to put this hackathon together. And I'd also really want to thank all of our teams for the work they've put into their proposals, the advisors who provided them with expert guidance, and of course our judges for bringing their expertise to the competition today, as well as all of you attending here in our audience. As I said, I'm very excited to hear today's proposals. From what we've seen, it seems that they're going to be really proposals with the real potential to have true impact. And while only one team will win the chance to present at our roundtable prize event, I hope that all of the proposals we see here today will have life beyond this hackathon. Okay, for the format, you might have noticed that we're recording today, so just to be aware of that. As I mentioned, over the last 3 weeks, over 130 alumni have been participating to come up with policy solutions to real climate issues. We've got 37 teams participating, and each team had 24 hours to work to come together with a policy proposal that you're about to see today. The policies were split into the 4 COP26 themes: finance, collaboration, adaptation, and mitigation. And as I mentioned, each theme had expert advisors who could help along the way. So today we're going to be hearing from both the finance and collaboration teams. They'll be presenting their proposals that encourage mobilising finance and working together to deliver climate solutions. The format is that one presenter from each team will present. They'll have 5 minutes to share their policy proposal. And during that time, do feel free to use the chat box to share comments and questions. Another team member will be able to answer your questions via the chat box. So I do really encourage you to use that. Once the presentations have been presented, we will move to our panel of expert judges. So to introduce our judges today, we have Dr. David Bino. Dr. David Bino is the National Coordinator of the Global Environmental Facility Small Grants Programme and the United Nations Development Programme Multi-Country Office for Barbados and the OECS, where he is responsible for the effective management of GEF SGP local team, the SGB programme and its portfolio of projects. Previously, Dr. Bino has worked as an agronomist and with the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, Fisheries and Water Resource Management. He currently sits on the National Climate Change Committee and is a technical advisor on blue economy development, and has served as a member of the United Nations Environmental Programme's Scientific and Expert Review Team, assessing emerging issues impacting the SIDs, the SIDS. And perhaps most relevant to today, Dr. Bino is a 2006 Commonwealth Scholar. Thanks. Welcome to Dr. Bino. Our second judge is Sergei Maslichenko. Sergei Maslichenko is the former Deputy Minister for the Ministry of Energy and Environmental Protection of Ukraine. During his time as Deputy Minister, he led the preparation of Ukraine's green energy transition strategy to 2050, as well as the National Energy and Climate Plan, and the corporate governance reform and strategies of state-owned energy companies. As if that wasn't enough, in 2020, he founded Climate Finance and Clean Tech, an investment and analytic platform dedicated to matching a fast-growing climate finance industry with vast and high-return business opportunities in clean tech in Eastern Europe and Ukraine. In 2007 to 2019, Sergei led the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, work on energy efficiency and renewables in Eastern Europe, and contributed to 2 billion investments in the region. In the 2000 to 2019 period, he was a board director at the Green for Growth Fund Luxembourg, which invested over 600 million in 19 countries. And Sergei is a 2002 Chevening Scholar. Finally, our third judge, last but not least, is Dr. Joanna Poon. Dr. Joanna Poon is the head of built environment within the College of Science and Engineering at the University of Derby, where she's responsible for the overall development and management of the division, covering the subject areas of civil engineering, quantity surveying, construction, architectural technology, and interior architecture. She's also the lead for the ERDF low carbon project, through which she actively engages with built environment, professional bodies, and wider academia, serving as a national committee member, external examiner, and external panel member for undergraduate and postgraduate courses, and editorial boards for international journals. She's an active researcher and publishes widely in pedagogy and in the built environment, construction, project management, and property investment. So I think you'll all agree that we're in very informed and able hands today with our judges, and a big thank you to our judges for taking the time to support this event. Okay, now we've been through the logistics and our panel, I'm very excited to introduce our finance teams. Today we have 4 teams presenting on finance policy solutions, and these teams represent Brazil, Indonesia, India, and Sub-Saharan Africa. One presenter per team will present the policy solution, and a second member will answer audience questions posted in the chat box. So do post your questions, you won't be distracting the presenter. I will set my timer and give a warning at 1 minute. So just do be aware that I will interrupt just to give you a 1 minute warning, and hope that doesn't throw you off. Once we've finished the 5 minutes, judges will be invited to ask 1 question at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'm very pleased to be able to present our first team. The team name is Accessible Finance Brazil. They represent Brazil, and they are all members of the Chevening Scholarship community. The presenter is Guilherme Castro, and the question answer is Manuela Rangel Cantalice. So without any further ado, over to you.
Hi, Catherine. Can you hear me well? Just check. Perfect. Welcome, everyone. We are the Amazon Green Credit Hub, a multi-stakeholder platform to facilitate microcredit origination through an environmental justice lens. First slide, please. Brazil is one of the 10 largest emitters of CO2 in the world, and 72% of these emissions come from deforesting. So the no-return point of the Amazon destruction should be a global priority. Like climate change, the impact of forest destruction is extremely unequal, especially for smallholders, indigenous people, and communities dependent on the forest to survive. However, due to the lack of economic and political incentives, there is still a strong pressure to deforest. An effective tool to help smallholders and sustainable cooperatives fighting this problem would be providing financial solutions to promote bioeconomy value chains. However, the access to funding is also unequal to these groups. There are several challenges, including non-comment regularization, unbanked condition, too high ticket offered by local institutions, and the lack of capacity to prove recurrent revenue. The consequence is that even when green finance is available to invest in mitigation and sustainable projects, due to the lack of local knowledge, the money doesn't reach who is in most need of it. The number of decentralized organizations working in the Amazon makes it harder for financial institutions to decide which will truly use the resource for protection. Moreover, applying traditional market tools to evaluate cooperatives' capacity of repayment are still not enough, as it should consider other factors, such as their contribution to keep the forest standing. But the Amazon Green Credit Hub was proposed to solve this challenge and allow the cooperatives to access microcredit while de-risking financial institutions' green investment. Next slide, please. The Amazon Green Credit Hub is a multi-stakeholder platform that will facilitate microcredit origination through our own certification methodology, Sustainable Tag. As you can see on the left, the hub will connect existing and new credit lines with sustainable cooperatives in the Amazon, becoming a trusted standard for funders and banks to find the most vulnerable yet meaningful beneficiaries. We will partner with local organizations, our green agents, already established in the Amazon that work directly with our target cooperatives, leveraging their capacity of raising funds. These agents will help us to certify the cooperatives based on the potential to avoid emissions, generate carbon credits, and other social co-benefits. The methodology will also take into consideration credit repayment risk, but suggesting a tailored pay-as-you-produce strategy aligned with gender and social context, needs, and seasonality impact on each cooperative. As you can see on the right, we will also establish standardized KPIs to measure socioeconomic and climate impact with the participation of local focus groups. Finally, we will also provide technical assistance to promote the creation of new cooperatives to scale the hub's reach. Next slide, please. Increased economic return of regenerative production and nature-based products makes the forest standing more valuable than destroyed. Additionally, helping these cooperatives access the market will unlock more funds for them to invest in new technologies, expand or aggregate more value to the products and service, and consequently improve sustainable livelihoods while preserving the forest. Moving these groups from passive grant support to financial market inclusion empowers these cooperatives to decide their investment strategy based on the real needs of scalability opportunities. This will also give them more autonomy and ownership of their projects. Finally, the hub supports resilience development by promoting cooperativism, strengthening smallholders' relationship with their local community and the environment. The hub also aims to deliver just and inclusive climate action, including gender and social particularities on a bottom-up solution. Next slide, please. So we structured our pilot implementation in 3 stages. In our local engagement, we will create a gender-balanced, multi-level board with community leaders, green agents, and financial institutions representatives. The board will develop a working plan with direct engagement from supply and development stakeholders and establish the first focus group with pilot cooperatives. On the second stage, we will focus on the methodology development with the selection of the primary funder to support the hub and develop its sustainable tag certification through a digital platform to connect cooperatives and funders. Finally, we will focus on microcredit origination, certifying the first round of beneficiaries in partnership with the green agents, and facilitating an open round of investments for certified cooperatives. The fees paid by financial institutions to access our certified cooperatives map will fund the hub's operation. A performance fee for successful projects invested through our platform will also ensure our expansion plans. The chosen cooperatives will receive our service free of cost, and we also expect to remunerate the green agents based on the quality of information provided. With the TA, we aim to help more communities to develop social capital and establish new cooperatives. Our method can be replicated in other regions of Brazil, where economic pressure for environmental destruction is also a problem. We are the Amazon Green Credit Hub. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Guilherme. Your timekeeping was better than mine. You actually finished there on 5 minutes and I had 4. So thanks very much for being not only so good at presenting, but also very, very diligent with your timing. You've set the bar very high. That was fascinating. Over to the judging panel. Would one of 3 of you like to pose a question to Guilherme?
Yes, if possible. I would like to find out, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. I think you did a very good job in the very short time that you had. I would like to determine what are the key performance indicators that will be used to determine creditworthiness or increase creditworthiness after entering the actual program.
Hi, David. Thank you for your question. And I think that this is one of the points on our proposal that is innovative. we want to check the capacity of the cooperatives to pay based on the seasonality. So one of the points that we identify when discussing with local people is that, for example, women in the forest would struggle to pay sometimes during school holiday season, because they have to keep with the children and they cannot produce as much as they do when you have school periods working. What we want to try with the credit worthiness is guarantee that the payment structure understands the seasonality of the production and also the diversification of portfolio that happens, exists inside the forest. The cooperative will also establish a routine of payment where you have a base payment plus an additional variable one to understand and how you can contribute and reduce the risk for banks when they are lending the money to these cooperatives.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Guilherme. A great start to today's presentations. So congratulations to you and the rest of Team Accessible Finance Brazil. Our next team is called Green Navigate, and they are made up of Chevening alumni from Indonesia. The presenter will be Dito Adesuryo, and the questions will be answered by Anissa Indah Pratiwi. So without further ado, we will hand over to Dito.
Thanks, Kate. Good evening from Jakarta, you all, and good morning, good afternoon, everywhere you are. So we are a group of 5 from Green Navigate, and we would like today to present our policy proposals on integrated monitoring system for renewable energy financing. So we will start from the challenge. This year, Climate Finance Forum put strong emphasis on climate financing for the first time, while Indonesia will take the G20 presidency next year. While in the national level, Indonesia has also just recently updated its NDC by targeting significant renewable energy share in the medium and long term. It's a massive challenge to scale up renewable energy in power sector in Indonesia. This cannot be done by our own efforts, but also involving robust collaborations on investment and climate finance.
In a session, so I couldn't talk. No, still there, but I can.
From our research, although Indonesian government has established a few numbers of climate finance platforms in recent years, however, a recent survey has shown several challenges. Its lack of project pipelines, as its number is still limited. Next, it's also about lack of suitable financing instruments, as it cannot compete commercially with conventional energy sources. It's also about lack of familiarity, which creates barriers and limited access from businesses and investors to make green investment come true. Reflecting these circumstances, we set up our policy proposals, which is, next slide, please. The solutions come up with integrated monitoring system for renewables finance. In all objectives, first, transparency of renewable ecosystem finance flows should be increased, addressing the growing interest of investors and businesses in renewables power development. Second, identifying main trends, sectors, and project pipeline will be essential to combat lack of familiarity on renewables investment projects. In our scope, we would like to propose the creation of one-stop integrated monitoring system for finance flows, which will focus on 4 Indonesia's climate funding platforms, which are 1, Indonesia Environment Fund, 2, the SDG 1, and number 3, Geothermal Fund, and number 4, Green Sukuk, or Islamic bonds. Our policy analysis and the proposed tool will be expected to bring impacts to a more familiar climate finance informations, which will affect and provide more appetite across sectors. This will cover impacts also on jobs, higher investment, and higher ease of doing business, as you can see from the slides, while in the next years and in the coming years, there are more upscale capacity of renewables that can bring for jobs, for example. And it can bring also a more enhanced impacts on multiple SDG pillars. In the next slide, please. So yeah, our policy proposal on integrated monitoring system will be helped by a useful dashboard, as you can see in the slide, that will contain a few clusters of essential information, such as the basic data and also the share of fundings and the possible financial platform that can help investors and businesses. Then next slide, please. We will walk through the implementation.
One minute remaining.
Our comprehensive analysis, which is the fiscal policy recommendation itself, the output of our dashboard will highlight the finance board. We expect it to contribute in the government renewables ambitions in new investments and projects. And this will be done in consultation with various stakeholders. And also for the funding support, this initiative will be generated by collaborative scheme, either with the state budget and also will be assisted by collaborations with international climate funds. That's all from Green Navigate. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Again, fascinating presentation and exceptional timekeeping skills. Really great at using the time efficiently. So well done for that. Panelists, over to you. Is there a question for the Green Navigate team?
Yeah, so if I may ask a question. So first, thank you very much for the presentation. And I would like to ask, you mentioned the impact. So can I ask what is the indicator to measure the impact? And also, more important, how do you measure the longevity of the impact of the project?
Yes, Joanna, thank you for your excellent question. As you can see from our presentation, that the impact for the long term means not only a particular impactful in one side, for example, in renewables development itself, in enhancing renewable capacity in power sector, but also in several activities and programs such as green jobs creations, ease of investment, and also more access to clean energy. As you can see, that's representing the pillars of SDG, such as SDG 7, SDG 13, SDG 11, and SDG 9. So, for example, I will give you one example in jobs. In a recent forecast created by an energy economist, if Indonesia can enhance 1 gigawatt renewables within 5 years, that means across sectors, multiple sectors in the Indonesian economies, it can generate around 22,000 green jobs. So that's on jobs. And also, for example, also in ease of doing business, that our proposal in this case will also make green and climate financing pipelines that are available in Indonesia can also not only situated in the silo, but will be more familiarized to private sectors and business, and also can be for startups, for example. So it can provide more impact not only in one sector but also in multiple sectors, and also have a multiplier effect in sustainable development goals progress. That's Joanna from us.
Greetings again. If I may have a quick question for you as well. Very good presentation. I think it was very clear. With reference to Indonesia, do you currently have a measuring, reporting, and verification system at the national level? And how does this particular proposal integrate to the MRV system that may be in existence in Indonesia?
Yes, David, thank you for your questions. It's a bit challenging for an integrated monitoring system, particularly in climate financing for renewables, particularly because there are some currently there are some separated initiatives that belongs to different entities. For example, the Indonesian Environment Fund belongs to Ministry of Finance, while SDG 1 belongs to Ministry of Planning, and Geothermal Fund belongs to a public financing corporation under Ministry of Finance, collaborating with Ministry of Energy. And it's a bit challenging and complicated if we, for example, we count how much the absorption and the use of climate financing in certain period, for example, in 1 year, because we have a different, and also maybe it could be double counting for the use of climate financing. So in this case, we come up with that solution in that dashboard that we propose to you, and this dashboard will be embedded to the Ministry of Finance, which is fiscal in this case Fiscal Policy Agency as the national designated authority of UN climate finance. And this more powerful position will create more stick and carrots for different entities across Indonesian public policy makers to provide a more integrated reporting data and system. That's David, we can share.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Sergey, did you have your hand up? I'm just conscious that we're tight on time. So it's great that there are so many questions. I think it's a really good sign. If I could ask that the first judge to ask a question, we can have a live response orally, and then any other questions, if judges, if you wouldn't mind popping them in the chat, and then the dedicated answerer can answer those ones, just so we can keep the presentations moving. Sergi, was your question related specifically to the presentation, or are there?
Yeah, it was. Thank you. It was related to presentation, but let's keep it.
Is that okay? I promise to come to you first for the next questions. Great. If you just pop that in the chat, then Dito or Anissa will be able to answer. Thank you so much, Dito. We will move on to our third team. So this team is called Trillions 4CA. They're a team made up of 3 Chevening alumni from India. The presenter will be Rakesh Kumar Bhutoria, and the question answerer would be Arun Kumar. So just a reminder, if you do have any questions during the presentation, pop those into the chat, and Arun will have a go responding to those as the presentation is going on. So over to you, Rakesh.
Yeah, hello everybody. Trillions for CA stands for Trillions for Climate Action. And what we aim to do is to create a focused climate fund, which not only mobilizes finance, but also keeps in mind the well-being of millions of people, thereby creating a mass movement. Our policy proposal was really inspired by an OECD report titled Increasing Incentives for Climate Action Using a Well-Being Lens. And what this report really highlighted, which resonated with the team, was that climate mitigation policies are likely to be easier to implement politically, economically, and socially when there is a two-way alignment between climate action and the broader goal of human well-being and sustainable development. Thus, the challenge identified by us is to mobilize finance, but ensuring that millions of people are engaged, and thereby there's a mass movement, and this becomes sustainable in perpetuity while developing ecosystem capabilities and so on. So unlike very niche climate action projects, this is intended to create a vehicle whereby there are multiple projects across different categories, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides. Can we move to the next slide, please? So our solution really focuses on, as I said earlier, creating of a focused world climate fund, which is anchored by certain pre-identified international financial institutions, which contribute through their finance, of course, but equally with their expertise. And one interesting aspect of our solution is that all beneficiaries are also expected to contribute, so that they have skin in the game and are committed to the efforts. The funds are then deployed in pre-designed project categories with a large number of smaller projects under each category. And so that there is a fitment with the, the size of the corporates or the scale of the underlying beneficiaries and the nature of project or the size of project that is made available to them. Each project categories is of course designed keeping the expertise of the international financial institutions in mind and creating certain boundary conditions such that at a project individual level, there is impact on the livelihoods of the beneficiary, but at the same time, finance is made available to them. Ultimately, what happens is that if one has identified the relevant project categories and secured financing and come up with the boundary conditions for various project categories, as I mentioned, then one can voluntarily seek beneficiaries to join the movement. And over a period of time, it becomes a whole effort in perpetuity. Next slide, please. So the impact is multifold if this movement really takes off. But primarily what we are hoping is that there will be climate action at scale, which will be evident based on matrices designed for each project category. And equally importantly, every beneficiary who's participating at a project level sees some improvement in quality of life or livelihood or well-being at large, so that, as I mentioned earlier on, the twin objectives are kind of achieved. And it goes without saying that the financial institutions and other contributors would be looking at certain threshold of returns on their investments, which of course would be part of the design of the project categories and the underlying projects within each category. Next slide, please. Regarding the implementation, this is intended to be driven at a governance level at the focused World Climate Fund level, based on the inputs and the standards stipulated by the international financial institutions. And then for each project category, there will be a separate special purpose vehicle. And within that category, there will be several large number of smaller projects, what we call the project at an individual unit level, which is where the specific beneficiary participates and seeks reward out of that participation.
1 minute remaining.
And simultaneously, of course, once these PIUs, the impact is aggregated at the SPV level, then at a project category level, you see a significant, hopefully, impact on climate action. And when all of these project category impact is accumulated, then we are talking of fairly significant impact. Next slide. So since I have a little bit time, I may give a very brief illustration that if we think of restoration of wasteland as a project category, then one can think of a certain geographic area and many, many smaller projects under that category, and expert studies can be deployed to create the boundary conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another really great presentation. Okay, I think it's Sergey try if he has a question.
Yeah, thank you very much for very interesting presentation. Just wanted to ask, you know about the existence of Green Climate Fund, and just wondering what is the difference of your proposal, because as for me it looks quite similar. Probably you propose something different, I mean, to improve efficiency. I mean, everybody knows that GCF is not super efficient, but would be interesting to learn from you.
Yeah, thanks. So as I understand, the Green Fund is willing to finance any project which qualifies as a green project. So if I, as a potential beneficiary, come up with a certain project and I come in and say that, look, this is how there's going to be a positive impact on climate or what have you, then they would be willing to look at financing that project. What we are talking about is that the broad project category themes, if you like, are pre-decided and based on a lot of expert inputs, studies, research, and so on. And based on that, the categories and the underlying smaller projects to be used or to be implemented are then identified, and then that is taken to market for beneficiaries to participate in those projects. So that's the basic difference, because what we are trying to suggest is that we can create an inherent replicability under this, which will help us accelerate the real climate impact and also monitor, and there's a learning curve in all of this. So that's one big difference. The other difference is that those projects are primarily focused under the Green Fund on climate action outcomes. Ours is a twin objective. One is climate action, but at the same time, we want to see some tangible benefit for the beneficiary outside of climate action. And why do we want it? Because we believe that will make the entire effort far more sustainable in the long run. The mass movement that I referred to. Hope that clarifies to some extent. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for that, Rakesh. Okay, over to our fourth and final finance team, Dunia Bora. This is a team that's transnational, representing Chevening and CSC alumni from Ghana, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Mauritius. Our presenter will be Keketso Mochiwadi, and the questions will be answered by Estine Klassen. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Team Dunia Bora.
Good day. My name is Keketso Mochiwadi, and I am part of Dunia Bora, and we'd like to welcome everyone to this presentation titled Pricing for Our Future, Africa Emissions Trading Scheme. What has brought us together is the pursuit of practical, large-scale climate change mitigation measures. Such actions require funding, and hence we were presented with the challenge, developing a climate policy solution that generated climate finance for the African continent. Understanding the very real challenge and timeframe we have available to us as a planet, Dunia Bora asked ourselves, is there a policy that could not only mobilize climate finance, but also aid in decreasing greenhouse gas emissions? Next slide. That question led us to our solution, developing an African emissions trading scheme, a cap and trade system covering greenhouse gas emissions open to all countries in Africa. A cap and trade system sets a limit or a cap on emissions from specific sectors, and emission allowances or the right to emit are distributed either for free or through auctions totaling the cap. The total cap is decreased annually, thereby forcing emitters to follow suit. The policy, therefore, would not only reduce GHG emission levels, but the revenue generated through allowance auctions would be utilized in a number of Africa-wide emissions reduction projects and initiatives, such as transitional support to industries, where revenue can be used to assist carbon, energy-intensive, or trade-exposed industries that are significantly impacted by the carbon price, or climate investments, where revenue goes to financing climate change mitigation projects, which serve as carbon sequestration deals that plug into worldwide emission trading systems, or research and development, where funding R&D can be utilized by all participating countries to mitigate and adapt, and agriculture, forestation, and oceanic, where suitable and innovative agro-ecosystem development will be required for Africa to meet our SDGs and reduce deforestation due to an increased pressure on agriculture. Next slide. The primary target communities are high GHG emitting industries, African governmental institutions, developmental financial institutions such as the Africa Development Bank, that we have highlighted as a potential institution to manage the selling of emission allowances to participating scheme members, and vulnerable communities and households, such as low-income households, as they are affected the most by the inequality aggravating effect of climate change. The International Energy Agency reported in 2018 that Africa emitted a total of 1,228 metric megatons of CO2. Placing a price on carbon between $5 and $25 per ton of CO2 shall produce a revenue of $6 to $32 billion respectively. This price bracket was determined by researching current implemented ETSs around the world. The Africa ETS that we are presenting will cover CO2 equivalent emissions, therefore including other gases such as methane and nitrous oxide to be a more holistic solution. Therefore, the revenue generated will be higher than the estimated $6 to $32 billion. Next slide, please. 50 African countries are committed to the Paris Agreement, indicating that the majority would be approachable for a solution such as this in addressing the region's needs. For participating member countries, the AETS will apply to GHG emissions from the power, buildings, construction, transport, and industry sectors in order to cover an estimated 80% of emissions. For the inaugural year, calculated discounts will be given to sectors depending on their emission levels for transitional assistance, trade exposure, and to prevent carbon leakage. Credits shall then transition to full auctions after. These sectors can trade emission units to meet their target needs. To do this at least cost, emitters can either apply emission mitigation measures or buy emission permits through the simple supply and demand of emission permits, and ETS creates a market price for GHG emissions. Key stakeholders we have identified are national governments, financial institutions, the African Union, high-emitting industries, and carbon sequestration projects. Carbon pricing is a climate policy that can ensure sustainable environmental limits are respected in an economically efficient method, while also taking into account its effect on societal developmental areas. In short, it can mitigate climate change, generate revenue, and address many universal needs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Keketso. That was incredible. Again, really great timekeeping. I think if people were as efficient with their resources as they were with their time on this call, we'd maybe be in a better place. Judges, I will let you choose who would like to pose a question to Keketso, but if there are more than one, please do write in the box. So can we have a question from the judges?
Can I proceed? Perfect. Thanks again for the excellent presentation. I think we have some very good presenters here today, and I'm very intrigued by what you would have presented. In the case of Africa, could you outline for us the appetite across the African states for a cap and trade system? And if you had to initiate this system, given that, for instance, in the US, this failed because you couldn't get everyone to agree on it, which would be the particular countries within Africa that you would probably say you would proceed with this system first as a pilot that would then facilitate scaling up?
Thank you for the question. So to your first part, it is a valid question with regards to the appetite of such a scheme. So while we're aware that Africa as a whole is one of the lowest emitters, there still exist high emitting industries all over the continent. And for humanity to do its best at combating climate change, we all need to do our part. We as a continent cannot sit idly by and watch as the house burns. We also have to do our part in putting out the blaze. The second part is that carbon pricing presents Africa an opportunity to generate revenue from intra and intercontinental trading that can be utilized for a myriad of benefiting initiatives in the continent. To your second question about which countries we would approach, we've looked at certain individual countries which have high emitting industries, such as South Africa or on the west coast of Nigeria, but then you also find certain African countries that are already plugging into the UN Clean Development Mechanism in order to generate money from having carbon sequestration projects, such as in Gambia, I believe, which recently is now getting paid for their forestation efforts. So we would look at countries on the continent that are high emitters and also already have a massive scope for large-scale carbon sequestration projects. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think you've got a question from a fellow, another teammate there in the box, so do crack on and get to answering that. Thank you so much to our 4 finance teams and judges for your work so far. I think we've really gotten off to a great start. To keep the momentum going, we will now move on to our collaboration teams. So for the collaboration theme, we have 6 teams presenting, representing Thailand, Latin, North and Central America, and Sub-Saharan Africa. Again, there'll be 1 presenter per team and a second team member nominated to answer questions. So do post your questions in the chat box. You won't be distracting the presenter. I'll give a warning at 1 minute, and then we'll ask judges to ask 1 question to the team. So our first team, the team name is Thailand Team. If you couldn't guess, they're representing Chevening alumni from Thailand, and they're a team made up of 4 people. The presenter will be Fashari Dwang Pradeep, who's also down to answer the questions, so maybe don't expect an immediate response. So without further ado, over to you, Thailand Team.
Okay, can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, very clear.
Okay, so our policy proposal is mobilizing for a fair, low carbon competitive economy through local waste action planning. Basically, the biggest goal of our team is to help Thailand transitioning from linear to circular economy. But how? Environmental problems have so many aspects of it. Then we think of the current situation that everyone has to face, which is the COVID-19. We think that every country is producing a lot of waste. Here we heard news about how local communities are facing issues arising from misconduct of waste management. So we think it's a good entry point to achieve our prominence goal. So we started to focus on the problems of waste management in our country. As the pressure builds to act on climate change, we believe that transformative change will not happen unless all actors become to have part in planning how to manage the environmental impacts, and the initiatives are well coordinated across scale, local plan linked with the national plan to sustainable outcome, or we can call it multi-scalar governance. So, okay, so we have our focus. We indicate 2 main challenges of waste management that are, the first one is the disconnection of local aspiration and national climate planning. There are no effective platforms or effective methods to build local people's capacity to address what they want, where they want, and how they want to solve the problem in their communities. The second one is in high-level meeting. We can never know what the real problems are. How do local people feel about the policy that the government put into place? People didn't have the chance to participate and choose what they think is the best option for them. So we are trying to do is address this gap, which is the problem from the root cause. So we go to the local communities, because without address this gap, our society will not be able to scale mitigation and adaptation efforts to achieve sustainable and equitable outcomes. Next slide, please. Okay, so the heart of our solution here is the collaboration of people in different sectors. Here we propose a strategic approach, which will be break into 3 components. The first one is organize national hackathons. As there are no effective platform of connections between locals and planning authority. We think the best way is to create one tool, and the inspiration come from the HMG Scholarship Alumni Climate Change Hackathon that we are doing now. The national hackathon that we propose is to be used as a platform to present ideas, the community action plans on waste, or we call it KAPAO. And a way of communicate among stakeholders is like a marketplace for the local communities and planning authorities to meet, and the authority gets to know what local needs and the reality of the problem. And the second one is the money. This is where private sector comes in to play the role. To execute KAPAO and the details of it, the funding needs to be allocated. If done appropriately, with the great KAPAO proposed in the National Hackathon and prospect benefits, companies might be interested in investing their money into local communities, and the climate investment will be emerged in different areas according to KAPAO. The third one is, however, the government sector has to lend its hand as the first financial grantor, so we can initiate the national hackathon and implement KAPAO to attract the investors. Moreover, we can use national hackathon and KAPAO to inspire and pave the way to revise the waste management laws, or in the overall scope, the environmental law itself, according to what local peoples really want. Next slide, please.
1 minute remaining.
impact here is what we want to achieve, which all comes back to our biggest goals are the first one, the collaboration among various players, the local communities, the planning authorities, and the companies. Second one here is transition from a linear to circular economy, using waste management as a critical instance of Thailand's environmental challenge. By using human rights-based approach, which are meaningful participation and co-production of knowledge in National Hackathon, we believe that our goal can be successfully achieved. So the final touches of this presentation is the next step. To mobilize the National Hackathon, the local communities need basic knowledge of environments, waste management program, options to that solution, and the adverse effects to climate change. So we have to contact stakeholders and people involved. And afterwards, we will distribute co-production of knowledge in waste management finance to other parts of the country. The proposal here is to share the knowledge and forge further collaboration among local, regional, or perhaps international cooperation, and to attract more investors, both domestically and the foreign one. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A great way to start off the collaboration themed presentations. Panel, over to you. Is there a question for Fashuri? Joanna.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, so thank you for the presentation. It's a good start for the collaboration theme. So one of the solutions mentioned is to encourage the private investment. So could you tell us a little bit more what initiative or what suggestion the Thailand team would encourage or try to persuade the private investment on pursuing this initiative?
Okay, thank you for your question, Joanna. We think that our policy proposal is about like attracting the national and foreign investors as much as possible to invest in this waste management investment, because I think it's one of our indicators that we are successfully nail our this national hackathon. I think we should propose the benefits of investing in waste management in our country, like reduce our taxes, and like I think we should try to propose this national hackathon to produce kapao or the community waste plan in different areas to one of our government sector in Thailand, which is the National Human Rights Committee of Thailand, because they have a mandate to propose the policy to other governmental sector in our country. And I think one of the policy that the committee can propose is offer to reduce tax for the private investors, both national and foreign one, to reduce the tax or maybe give them some other benefits to their companies. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and thanks, Joanna, for that question. And do continue to ask questions in the chat box if anybody has any follow-up questions for Thailand team. Okay, our second collaboration team is called Team Sunrise. This team is made up from 3 Chevening and CSC alumni from Nigeria. The presenter will be Ayari Oluwa Adegoke, and answering the questions will be Yotunde Fadiye. Sorry. So without further ado, over to you, Team Sunrise.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Between 2017 and 2021, the Nigerian government has introduced at least 5 climate change, rural electrification, and energy access type of policies, program, and projects. However, our policy proposition is meant to enhance what the government is currently doing. And that's based on the challenges that we have identified, as you can see on your screen. Some of the challenges we've seen is still the increasing use of fossil energy source, especially in rural communities. We still see that the current mini-grid system is heavily privatized and marginalizes the vulnerable and underserved population, even within existing mini-grid sites. We also have identified that a good number of these projects are heavily aligned to solar, which prevents the localization of other energy sources. We also see that consumers are just beneficiaries. They are not acting as key stakeholders in this particular process. We also see that the project or the execution and planning is also heavily centralized and very little contribution from the state and local government level. We also see the challenge of still poor access to credit, which makes it difficult for the proper to transition into modern energy services. And we also see some solar technologies, notably the solar home system product, has been unscalable and contributing to electronic waste in Nigeria. Next slide, please. Our proposition is based on several policy targets that are driven by the drivers, as you can see on the right of your screen. And we are proposing that with our project, we hope to initiate within the space of, between now and 2030, 1,000 community developed, managed and executed projects. This would likely be done in collaboration with other technical partners, civil society groups. We also hope to see a 35% reduction in emission in the electricity sector, which currently contributes 65% to overall emission in Nigeria. We also hope that about 5,000 trees of local importance will be planted. And we also hope to see the utilization of the current social protection scheme for the pro-poor, currently standing at 5,000 naira per month. We hope that a 10% of that can be allocated to communities that currently have, or that we have these new energy sources being developed for them as electricity sources. This is being calculated to deliver about 600 million naira in the space of 10 years. That is, we are leveraging the existing government policies of allocating funds to the poor and just allocating a fraction of that to pro-poor households within sites that have existing power sources, be it a solar-based or hydro-based mini-grid system. Next slide, please. Some of the impact that we envisage from this our policy proposal, we are going to likely see an increased use of electricity for productive use. We also see the impact on food and water security in existing communities. We also see it potentially impacting sustainable rural economy. We also see improved agricultural practice because of the introduction of electricity, which means that they are able to access modernized agricultural farming. And we also see security and avoidance of gender-based violence. And we see this contributing to rural women development who are being currently marginalized in our rural communities. And we also see the preservation of the forest, which is currently being strained by the heavy dependence of natural resources for electricity generation. And we see the importance of that through impacted through healthcare and social protection projects. Next slide.
1 minute remaining.
Part of the process of implementation of this policy will require a consultative approach that includes an inclusive process of service delivery in this pro-poor community. We also see the need to diversify and localize energy mix, a change in the current mapping that is heavily tilted towards solar energy. We also see the need for training, autonomy, and authority being given to local government to actually play a more active role in climate change governance. We also see the need to actually leverage the social protection scheme and leverage some of those finances to actually create a financing mechanism that improve the well-being of the pro-poor. We also see the need for us to have a decentralized coordination of the implementation and also the use of a multi-stakeholder model in which this vulnerable population are actually key actors in their own development. We also see the need for a more improved reporting through a cradle-to-cradle analysis of a developer solution, which limits the environmental hazard from the process of developing and implementing the project. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Panel, do you have any questions for Ayaroluwa? Yeah, over to you, Sergey.
Oh, sorry, you proceed, Sergey.
Yeah, thank you very much for a very interesting and well thought presentation. I'm just wondering about the practical instruments you're going to use to implement these policy changes. For example, you mentioned the social subsidies as a financing mechanism. Can you please elaborate a little bit how you see this mechanism would address these issues?
Yeah, okay. To answer the question, currently the Nigerian government have an existing social protection scheme that actually guarantees 5,000 naira, a monthly stipend, as I will put it, to poor communities across the different states in Nigeria. So far, based on official record and paperwork, it is being said that 1% of those funds is actually being utilized for that existing purpose. And in addition to that, the government and the agencies have actually identified the need for improved management and utilization of the funds. So the process we envisage is that if you have a list of beneficiaries and they are within the boundary or living within communities where there are existing mini-grid sites, instead of giving them the cash directly, you use that fund and direct the funds to the developer, which gives them that electricity access for that particular period of time, which is just 500 naira, a small fraction of the expected earning they are going to get. In other words, they will receive 4,500 for the month, and then they will have 500 naira given to them as electricity credit, which will help them to understand the value of electricity and also achieve some of the impact we have actually actualized. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much to Team Sunrise. Please do continue with the questions. I can see Dr. Bino's popped one there in the chat, so look forward to seeing the response to that. Great. Our third team on the theme of collaboration is the team called Green Education. This team is made up of 7 Chevening alumni from Mexico, Uruguay, Guatemala, Brazil, and Bolivia. The presenter will be John Valdez, and answering questions will be Mayara Nunez. So without further ado, over to you, Team Green Education.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, we can.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction, and congratulations to all the teams for reaching this stage of the hackathon. Our team supports implementation of green education empowerment networks, GREEN, to tackle climate change education gap in Latin America. During the first meeting that we had as a team, we all agreed on the importance of building up resilience for vulnerable communities living in one of the world's most affected regions to the effects of climate change. The following question was, how can we reach this goal with a low-cost initiative that could be expanded and sustained in time? After some research and brainstorming, climate change education and COP26 collaboration goal came as the answer. To our great surprise, later we found out that by 2016, less than 5 countries in Latin America have included climate change education in their national educational plans and nationally determined contributions. In this context, educational institutions were left with an unsystematic and mostly voluntary approach to this type of education. To use one example, a survey conducted in 2019 to more than 500 educators from Brazil reported the absence of accessible educational resources and updated and contextualized information on the main challenges facing their communities. This situation impacts more sharply on vulnerable populations, whom aside from the poor quality of education and limited access to scientific knowledge, they are virtually excluded from collaboration networks on climate change education. Next slide, please. Based on this analysis, our proposal supports the creation of a multi-stakeholder and community engagement digital platform that will serve 3 main goals organized under the COSTA framework. First, connect. It will serve as a hub for educational stakeholders, schools, universities, research institutes, educators, and so on, to facilitate networking and collaboration among peers experiencing similar challenges to guarantee this type of education. Share. The platform will serve as a free, open, and informal space for sharing tools, resources, and good practices to enhance educational methodologies on the topic. A special attention will be given to the dissemination of traditional and local forms of knowledge. Take action. Finally, the platform will encourage action among its main beneficiaries, students, teachers, and marginalized communities, like rural and indigenous peoples, by offering facilities for developing joint projects to foster active education and service learning initiatives. Next, please. We are confident that with implementation of the platform, first, more people across Latin America, particularly remote communities, will enjoy access to free and high-quality climate change education for increasing their resilience and furthering action to reduce their vulnerability and exposure. Second, collaboration among stakeholders will be reinforced through informal and formal networks that will transcend borders as a result of platform interactions. These networks could help other key actors, such as governments and civil society, to implement initiatives in favor of these remote communities. Finally, educational stakeholders will have the opportunity to access and share knowledge, resources, and good practices, reinforcing the existing networks and initiatives to support climate change education in Latin America. Next, please. The implementation of the proposal will follow 6 main steps that are part of a permanent improvement and expansion cycle. The first, second, and fifth steps are part of the logistics and administrative features of the project. In contrast, the second, third, and sixth stages will be dedicated to the execution and expansion of the initiative to other sectors or regions of Latin America. To address the scalability challenge, the team suggests launching a pilot project in countries or locations sharing similar contexts, for an analysis of common limitations, implementation opportunities, types of ecosystem, and local needs. For example, launching the pilot platform for vulnerable coastal communities, or for communities located within rainforests or the highlands. The accessibility and affordability of the project will be guaranteed through a substantial and active involvement of local stakeholders, which will support information and resources to the platform. It is important to note that the project will support a non-profit network with free resources for its users. Fundraising will be conducted for investing on the platform and for technical.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you. To summarize, next please. To summarize, our project, Green Latam, constitutes a viable and innovative initiative to foster climate change awareness and climate action by supporting education and community preparedness for the most vulnerable. We are confident that the networks and the clusters created with the help of the platform will be expanded and sustained in time, bringing transformative approaches to the regional adaptation and mitigation initiatives. I would like to take a few seconds just to express a few words of support to our dear member, Alejandro Moreno, who is currently undergoing a medical surgery. Thank you for your commitment and passion, and we wish you a fast and full recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. And yeah, echo those positive thoughts to your team member. Great. Well, I think we'll hand over to the panel. I'm not sure who would like to ask a question to Team Green Education. I can't see any hands up. Somebody just wants to jump in. Well, it must be, John, that you covered all of the possible questions in your presentation. I think it's a sign of a very well covered topic. If there are any questions from the judges or from the audience, do pop them in the chat box, and John or one of his teammates on the call will be able to answer those in written text. But thank you so much, John, and to your team for your presentation. Great. So now over to team 4 for the collaboration theme. This team is called Climate-Gration Team. They are made up of Chevening alumni from North and Central America, Costa Rica, Mexico, and Honduras. The presenter will be Edgardo Garcia Chavez, and the questions will be answered by David Inder. So over to you, Climate-Gration Team. Oh, Edgardo, I think you might be on mute. It was inevitable. There we go. Over to you. I'll start the timer now.
All right, thank you. In the last years, thousands of people from Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala have decided to leave their countries to begin their journey to the promised land, the United States. In caravans that can be up to 9,000 people, men, women, and children risk their lives in a path marked by violence and discrimination. The causes have evolved. Political instability, gang violence, or poverty are the best known reasons. However, one cause is becoming increasingly important in recent years: the rise in vulnerability caused by climate crisis. Historically, Central America has been heavily affected by natural events, but in recent decades, the negative effects of climate change have increased. According to German Watch Global Climate Risk Index, these countries rank first in terms of climate change risk, despite being responsible for only 0.5% of global emissions. The devastating effects of hurricanes and droughts have exacerbated conditions of poverty and violence, triggering migrant caravans to the United States. For example, in the dry corridor, an area that extends across the north of Central America, droughts have increased in recent years, affecting communities where 62% of the families depend on agriculture, 80% of the population lives under the line of poverty, and 25% suffer from food insecurity. Despite hundreds of cross-sectoral efforts and initiatives to address the problem, people still consider migrating as their only option, making evident the lack of appropriation and attachment to the projects and the territory. Next slide, please. This is why we propose a bottom-up participatory model to enable the community to lead their own project's design, and with this, increase their sense of belonging and appropriation in the short term, while creating the conditions to adapt to the climate change and improve their quality of life. Next slide, please. Using the methodology of design thinking, we seek to allow people to discover their opportunities, resources, and solutions that they can use to design prototypes for the challenge posed by climate crisis. Adaptable to different contexts, participatory design enable communities to engage in the implementation and management of their own projects, growing the sense of community, their common vision, and creating local leadership. Next slide, please. The implementation of this project will be based on a triangular cooperation model, where an international source of technical and financial support, such as the United Kingdom, grants funds and technical knowledge to facilitators with experience in the region from Costa Rica and Mexico, and in turn, they will transmit it to local leaders in the dry corridor. The stakeholders that we have in mind for this project are the Institute of Innovation and Public Purpose from University College London, the UK government, facilitators from Mexico and Costa Rica, as well as local communities in the Northern Triangle of Central America. UK expertise in this project will be essential, since organizations such as the IPP Institute have facilitated similar initiatives in the Dominican Republic. Our proposal may seem intangible at the first sight. We focus on participation and community empowerment on how projects are designed in the dry corridor. After conversations with local leaders that have been working in the area for years, we identified that the lack of appropriation and sense of belonging are the main problems that affect the success of initiatives oriented to tackle the new climate conditions. The Sustainable Development Goals and the COP26 objectives invite the global community to see in the active participation of communities and collaboration as tools to tackle the consequences of climate change. Committed to these ideals of well-being and sustainability, we propose this solution that will encourage the communities of the dry corridor to take lead in each project, and in the long term, build a territory where no one is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edgardo. Great to see a migration-themed presentation there. Joanna, if we could have a question from you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so great presentation. Thank you very much. So I really like the idea of the proposal of the bottom-up approach. So my question is actually, what is the suggestion on the approach on collaborating and coordinating from different local projects and initiatives to ensure the bottom-up approach will be able to achieve the maximum success?
Sorry, Joanna, can you repeat your question? Because I had some problems with the internet, sorry.
No problem. So yeah, so in the presentation, you suggest to use a bottom-up approach. So my question is, how would you suggest the approach to ensure the collaboration and coordination from the different projects or initiatives to ensure this bottom-up approach will be able to maximize the success for the initiative?
Right. Thank you, Joanna, for your question. Yes, as you mentioned, in bottom-up approaches is essential to create a management model where you have great communication with the local leaders and the local communities, okay? Because otherwise you won't have enough interaction and enough communication with these stakeholders. So usually what we have identified in previous projects in the dry corridor is that there's a gap between the local communities and the NGOs and the organizations that are working in these areas. So that's why we are proposing that the knowledge in design thinking will be transmitted from the facilitators from Mexico and Costa Rica to the local leaders who are going to be identified by a diagnostic that we will develop in the region. So identifying through the identification of local leaders, you will know who has legitimacy in the community to transmit this kind of initiatives, and they will lead the processes in the communities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, both to the presenter and the team for that. We will move on to our next collaboration team. This is the 5th group called Thenx. They're made up of 2 CSC alumni from Sub-Saharan Africa, representing Tanzania and Nigeria. The presenter will be Babatunde Osho, and answering questions will have Irene Ndebusha. So without further ado, over to you, Babatunde.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Catherine. Ladies and gentlemen, the challenge we are addressing through our policy proposal today, we focus on climate change awareness gap in Sub-Saharan Africa. And shortly, I will tell you why this is important. On your screen, on the right-hand side, is the outcome of a survey conducted by Gallup seeking to investigate how much people know about climate change. From this, we see that climate change awareness in Sub-Saharan Africa is the lowest at 44% of the population. And out of this 44%, 56% do not consider climate change as a serious threat, as shown on the bottom panel. So going by today's population estimate of about 1.136 billion people in Sub-Saharan Africa, can say that only less than 200 million people distributed across the 46 Sub-Saharan African countries who are climate change aware consider it as a threat. So we observe there is a correlation between this lack of awareness and the majority of African governments' climate change inaction. And as they know that they consider climate change not being a top development priority like public health, security, and poverty. So, and this has further led to a severe lack of information that quantifies the socioeconomic implications of climate change and also inadequate institutional capacity to tackle it. Awareness is a greatest agent of change. So lack of climate change awareness in SSA is a challenge we need to address to ensure the effectiveness of mitigation and adaptation policies. Next slide, please. So how do we address this challenge? We propose the use of mass media, specifically television and radio, to scale climate change awareness and educate the populace. Based on a review of different academic texts and policy documents, TV and radio is an instrumental tool to the development of perceptions and lifestyle. This is grounded in psychological effects of repetition and visual appeal. Climate change awareness and behavioral change in this context through high frequency, top of the mind, and non-intrusive audio and video content translated into different languages to reach a wider audience. Specifically, we are talking about content of less than a minute in duration that can be introduced in between broadcasts. So we will be targeting high-risk population in terms of climate vulnerability, comprising of young people, dwellers along coastal areas, and indigenous people, among others. Understandably, SSA has a young population. So while we will be reducing climate change vulnerability over the long term by targeting young people, we can achieve results in the short term by also targeting adults up to the age of 75. This is premised on the fact that majority of policymakers in SSA who are influential to decision-making fall within this category. Click, please. It is interesting that there has been an uptrend in the number of TV households over SSA over the last 8 years. This is coupled with the increasing pay TV subscription and rising number of community radio stations. So there is an opportunity here for us. Next slide, please. Through the mass media model, we are projecting an increase in climate change awareness in SSA by 10 to 15% over 3 to 5 years. This is expected to have a significant impact on climate change threat perception in the region. And secondly, through the increase of knowledge about climate change, we foresee a rise in adoption of sustainable lifestyles. For instance, organizations adopting sustainable packaging and individuals imbibing the culture of waste reduction, recycling, and reusing. Thirdly, by showing through media the overlap between climate change and socioeconomic prosperity, we foresee a rise in commitment and action towards the integration of climate change into development policies. We foresee a situation whereby we are moving from mere rhetorics to real political action. And lastly, we envisage a rise in foreign investment in the sustainability sector, leading to job creation. Next slide, please. So to implement the mass media policy model, a detailed action plan will be created following a rigorous review of the initial draft. This will be followed by partner and stakeholder engagement. We are collaborating with actors across different sectors to achieve ownership, sustainability, and technical and financial support. Click, please. So all these partners and stakeholders are distributed across different sectors, and they will be assisting to implement the initiative. Subsequently, a 6 to 12 months
1 minute remaining
in selected countries will be carried out to identify potential shortcomings, which will be reviewed and addressed prior to a launch. Finally, an effective monitoring and evaluation strategy will be developed to address delivery and impact of the project over time. So at this point, I would like to say thank you very much for listening on behalf of Team Climate Thenx, and I await your questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Babatunde. Over to you, judges. Yeah, David, if you'd like to ask a question.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Babatunde, for this presentation. It was very clear. And I see the approach that you're taking. And my contribution is more of a comment rather than a question. Given the current trends, and my work takes me to Africa quite frequently, especially before the pandemic, wouldn't you consider social media as opposed to traditional mass media as an excellent conduit, given that the large percentage of the persons that you're trying to reach are young people, and the rate of growth of mobile phone usage and app usage is probably greater than the rate of growth of access to televisions? Isn't that something that you considered, or you think that may be feasible?
Thank you very much for that question. Okay, so in terms of social media usage, we understand that most young people are on social media these days, and there is a large, when you look at the trend, talking about acquisition of mobile phones in Sub-Saharan Africa, it's trending up. But we need to also look at the fact that we are looking to target or carry along people that are in the rural areas who might not have access to internet-enabled mobile phones. And again, in Sub-Saharan Africa, from data, we see that data is still costly in most countries in Sub-Saharan Africa. When you compare that with the cost of having a radio, we see that having access to radio could help compared to internet access. So yes, social media is a very good option, and it could help to reach the younger population. But however, we need to also look at how people in the rural areas who might not really have the financial might to access data to connect to the internet, and other issues such as expensive mobile phones could also impact there. So thank you very much.
Excellent answer. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Babatunde, and to Dr. Bano for your question there. Any further questions, as ever, do pop them in the chat, and the team will be on the call to be able to answer those as well. Okay, it's hard to believe we've come to our final presentation from the collaboration team. The team's name is Gaia's Peace Victors, a team made up of 2 Chevening alumni, one from the Philippines and one from Oman. The presenter will be Irene D. Balones, and the answering questions in the chat will be Nasser Al-Salmani. So without further ado, over to you, our final team.
Good day from Gaia's Peace Victors. The team names derive from Irene, meaning peace, and Azur, granter of victory. The image depicts Mother Earth, Gaia, water above, and sky below to make us think differently with a common shared hope to implement concrete actions. Einstein once said, "Look deep into the nature and we will understand everything better." Next slide. The challenges. What are these challenges? The team underwent stakeholders mapping. In the wider Asia in the world, information awareness has been shrouded with value apathy due to lack of information and insufficient governance leadership. In the agricultural sector, fishermen use fine nets and dynamites that destroy aquatic marine life and coral reefs. The social unrest and lack of understanding of the ecosystem affected all, even the indigenous people. This behavioral indifference and humanity's inaction in carbon footprint, land overgrazing, and rapid industrialization brought catastrophe, food instability, economic repercussions, and planetary health risks due to diversity in worldviews on climate action burden. Next slide, please. Our policy proposal is a paradigm shift to institutionalize transnational green education, collaborative transformation of schools as catalysts for climate action. The synergized policy is gamification on changing the value mindset by engaging humanity through leadership and governance accessibility. How can we achieve the solution? By addressing the value of apathy and indifference on planetary health promotion and mobilization, an enabling environment for people's knowledge empowerment, sustainability through digital connectivity to engage learners. These sustainable solutions from local to Asian region are scalable to the global landscape. Next slide, please. The policy impact is to integrate and enable empowered target groups to play a vital role. How can this be done? Mobilize schools and communities, people empowerment of agricultural sectors, comprehensive land use planning to prevent migration shifts, sustainable fishing, mangrove reforestation, coral reefs conservation, the indigenous people's role in reforestation, preservation of biodiversity in the ancestral domains. This can be achieved by connectivity of key stakeholders and next slide, please. The policy is scalable on collaborative learning. In addition, it is accessible by cross-cultural engagement, artificial intelligence of the digital commons of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, print, media, radio, and television as learning mobilization tools. Furthermore, it is affordable and organizational policy brings synergy to bring together global connectivity and business organizations, technology hub, and accessible networking of academic policy action research on behavioral nudges for tax credit on zero greenhouse gas and renewable energy. To institutionalize transnational green education with the help of the United Nations COP26 for humanity and planetary health. Next slide, please. Next slide. Come join us, Gaia's Peace Victors, One Planetary Health, co-love for Mother Earth and humanity as one. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Irene. A great positive note to end on there, I think. So thank you for that. I will put the question to our judges if there are any questions for Irene and Team Gaia's Peace Victors. Just having a look if there's any hands up. No, I think that means, Irene, that again, your presentation must have really covered all of the questions there. Oh, wait, do we have, somebody's giving you a round of applause, which is nice to see some support from your fellow watchers. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much to Team Gaia's Peace Victors and to all of our teams today. Really incredible that you've managed to cram 24 hours of work into 5 minutes of presenting, and that we've all been able to understand and take something away from that. For me personally, it's been a massive learning curve, so thank you so much. Thanks particularly to, of course, to our presenters and to those managing questions, but also the team members behind the scenes who weren't presenting today. I know a lot of work has gone into this and it really shows. A massive, massive thank you to our judges today. I know it's going to be a difficult decision. The judges will now move on to a separate meeting where they will discuss and deliberate the different presentations to decide a winner. Thank you so much to all of our guests and our attendees for your engagement and support. On the slide, you can see the upcoming events. So we have tomorrow the adaptation event, which will follow the same format as today. Then on Thursday, the mitigation themed events, again, following the same format. And then the winners from each theme will present on the 27th of October in the grand final. So we do hope you can join us at those. As I mentioned, the judges will now go and deliberate, and they will be letting us know who of all the outstanding presentations they've decided to choose as the winning presentation. We will let you know their decisions as soon as we have them. The recordings of today's event will be made available, and we will share some information on how you can access those in case you want to listen up and have another listen. So just one last time, just a massive thank you to all of our participants today, in particular our judges, and we look forward to seeing you at the future events. Thank you very much.